Welcome to the latest addition to the Compliance Podcast Network, the podcast 10 for 10, which brings you the week's top 10 compliance stories curated together in one podcast each week. Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, brings you the compliance professional stories you need to be aware of at the end of your busy week. Sit back and in 10 minutes, hear about the stories every compliance professional should be aware of. Every Saturday, 10 for 10 highlights the most important news, insights, and analysis for the compliance professional, all curated by the voice of compliance, Tom Fox. Get your weekly filling of compliance stories with 10 for 10. Hosted by Tom Fox. 10 for 10 is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network. First, a word from the sponsor of the Compliance Podcast Network for this month, Ethico.
In the intricate world of ethics and compliance, each second is precious, and slow case closures are more than just delays, they're missed opportunities. Enter Ethico. Our solution revolutionizes case management, cutting closure times in half and turning every challenge into a chance for improvement. Imagine a workspace where efficiency and compliance coexist harmoniously. Don't just dream of faster resolutions, make it your reality. Visit ethico.com/CPN today to book a demo and dive into our exclusive white paper by Tom Fox, the ROI of Compliance, and to try our free ROI calculator. Empower your team with the tools they deserve.
10 for 10 for the week ending April 6, 2024. Our first story comes to us from the Maritime Executive, and it details the Trafigura settlement with the Department of Justice over its bribery and corruption in Brazil involving Petrobras. Trafigura settled for $126 million in an oil trading case. If you'd like more information on the Trafigura case, check out my blog post where I did a 4-part series. Next up, our first article today from the Wall Street Journal, Risk and Compliance Journal, Richard Vandeford reporting, Ericsson says that its U.S.-imposed monitor has okayed its anti-corruption program. Ericsson says the monitor has certified that its anti-corruption program is working, a crucial step for the company's emergence from the DOJ scrutiny it's been under since it admitted to briberies in 2019 and then admitted to additional conduct which was either discovered or reported thereafter. The monitor said Ericsson's anti-corruption program has, quote, satisfied the requirements and is functioning effectively, according to a company press release. The monitor was put in place after the more than $1 billion settlement in 2019 over worldwide bribery schemes by Ericsson. Next up, from Law 360, Bonnie Eslinger reporting that there was a whistleblower from Autonomy, and that whistleblower sued Autonomy for wrongful termination and was paid $750,000 over his termination. This information is new, coming out, or at least publicly came out for the first time in the trial of Mike Lynch, who is on trial in San Francisco for his role in the alleged fraud in Autonomy's books and records involving their sale to HP. Next up, from Bloomberg, a pair of Swiss bankers face trial for their role in the 1MDB scandal. It started back in 2009 and went forward for multiple years, where 2 Swiss bankers helped hide and launder money from funds stolen from 1MDB by J-Lo and his compadres. They have not spoken about their role in public, and now they're going to face trial for their alleged roles going forward. Next up, from the financial regulation news, it has a summary of the trading companies who have come to grief under FCPA in violation starting in September 2020 and literally up through last week where Trafigura reported its FCPA settlement. The article reports that 20 individuals pled guilty to FCPA or related crimes and that $1.7 billion in total fines and penalties was assessed by the Department of Justice. Our next story comes to us from Reuters, which reports that the Speaker of the South African Parliament has resigned amid an anti-corruption probe. She said she was resigning her position amid an investigation into alleged corruption during her tenure as defense minister. She did note that my resignation is no way an indication or admission of guilt regarding the allegations leveled against me. In a case of domestic corruption, the New York Post, Melissa Koenig, reporting that JFK dispatchers were charged in a reprehensible bribery scheme to let cabbies skip the passenger pickup line. I can't think of indeed more reprehensible approach, but the bribe payments were tiny, $20 and made in cash or via Zelle or some other mechanism, but it really speaks to the challenges of living as a yellow cab driver and what you have to do to actually get a fare in New York City. From ESPN, Moises Lorenz and Sam Marston reporting that former Spanish Football Federation President Luis Rubiales was detained by police on allegations of corruption related to moving the Spanish Supercopa event from Spain to Saudi Arabia. So yet more corruption in the world of soccer. Unfortunately, we're seeing quite a bit of that. Our next story is our second story from the Wall Street Journal, Risk and Compliance Journal, this time Mingy Sun reporting that the Securities and Exchange Commission says a key factor in reducing off-channel communications fines is self-disclosure. A firm's decision to disclose these violations directly to the SEC can potentially reduce its fine by a significant amount, says the Deputy Director of SEC Enforcement. In a speech, he detailed how regulators assess fines in such cases, adding that the regulators responding to a critique from the defense bar that the SEC was simply picking numbers at random, and actually they said, no, there's method to our madness. And since December 2021, the SEC has filed charges against 60 firms and imposed more than $1.7 billion against firms who had off-channel communications. Largely, these communications were against existing policies and procedures. And finally, from the Washington Post, Daniela Brill reports that a California legislator has filed legislation to make it give their employees the right to disconnect, meaning they could turn off their cell phones or other communication devices after working hours so that they didn't have to answer text from their bosses at 9 p.m., 10 p.m., midnight, whenever their bosses might send it to them. This is a growing frustration for many, that when your boss shoots you an IM at 9 p.m. on a weekday about something that can wait till the next day and then expects a response or some other type of reply while you should be allegedly at home. Businesses, of course, have pushed back against this legislation, and the reality is the 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 job is largely a thing of the past, and we're all on and available literally 24/7. So, the right to disconnect. As I mentioned at the start of this podcast, this month's sponsor for the entire Compliance Podcast Network is Ethico. Have you ever wondered how to show the ROI of your compliance program? Have you struggled with the budgeting process, getting the funds you want for your compliance program? Well, I've partnered with Ethico to put together a white paper on the ROI of compliance, which shows you not only how to demonstrate ROI, but also how to speak finance when you're sitting across from the CFO with your budget proposals. Check out the website and get the white paper. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of 10 for 10. I hope you'll check out the newest podcast in the Compliance Podcast Network, the Compliance Tip of the Day. In Compliance Tip of the Day, I give a 5 to 8 minute summary of one tip that you can integrate into your compliance program or put together for greater compliance program efficiency.